Sometimes critics get it wrong, and that was the case with this movie, as I don't get why it wasn't a certified banger in the eyes of everyone but me. I loved it. From my first watch to whatever watch I'm in right now, I think it's quite a gem of a movie. Let me tell you why. The general consensus, that metric being taken from Rotten Tomatoes just for the sake of the argument, has determined that this movie struggled separating itself from the pack of other found footage movies that seemed to be a dime a dozen during this movie's release window and dwelled into mediocrity because of that. Writing this in defense of 12 years after its release, I can say that time has done the movie a favor as the market is no longer saturated with found footage. Watching As Above, So Below under the pretense of someone who isn't jaded with the idea is a great lens than that of an audience member in
Good
2014
luck.
who were being bombarded with what felt like a found footage
Okay, listen.
film every other month.
I don't know
I
what
think
to
this
do,
movie
but
does
you make
separate
it.
itself from the pack, as I have rewatched this movie multiple times throughout the almost decade and a half since its release. Wow, I feel old saying that. I especially saw it more than any paranormal activity film. I do agree that these characters are one dimensional and that the writers found one trait to focus on and stuck to the gun, but I still think that's more than enough for a film like this, as by the end of the movie, bar one character, their deaths make sense and move the story along. I'll talk about that a bit later though. I still think this is one of the few films that benefits from the found footage genre. It actually adds to the claustrophobia when they start to plummet underground. The catacombs being the main setting does wonders for this movie in terms of visual appeal. Without the knowledge of this being a movie, the catacombs themselves are just scary and haunting to be in, and that fear translates to film very easily. I'm surprised that not a lot of other films use this setting, and I'm pretty sure that's because this is the first and only movie to have access to these catacombs given to them by the French government. Also, this just so happens to be my fave tropes in movies, either the literal or metaphorical descent into hell or madness. I love that trope, and this is a good visual representation of that since they literally visit hell at one point in the movie, and it lives up to all my expectations. This version of hell is not too cartoony as some movies make it out to be. I swear, hell in most movies looks like that one Tom and Jerry episode where Tom is shown what cat hell looks like. This version is subtle and different, yet not too different that I can't tell where the characters are at. But before we go into hell, I should mention the main character, the hyperactive, super genius, explorer slash Laura Croft type individual named Scarlet. She is the reason the crew are in the catacombs, as she is in search of the Philosopher's Stone, which grants immortality and turns any metal to gold. This is where I understand some of the complaints about one-dimensional characters, as her character trait is being smart, and they run with that idea. The writers forget to give her some of the sort of flaw which is necessary even in a movie like this. I want to feel like I'm following someone who is smart and knowledgeable about the destination in which they're exploring, like the crocodile hunter, but at the same time is relatable with a flaw that we can all get along with, which Scarlett just doesn't have. She doesn't change much from the beginning to the end of the movie. Having said that, I still like this character because I'm a horror fan. I know generally what I'm getting into with when I watch these movies. So I'm not asking for much. And I think this movie isn't one to be asking much for its audience other than to dedicate an hour and a half in return for entertainment. I just think I'm the perfect audience for a movie like this because I can overlook something if the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Speaking of character, I should mention this movie does an okay job with the kills. As they are making their journey down to hell, they are confronted with demons manifested as their own memories and trauma slash past sins, but are given a chance to rectify them. From what I understand, if they don't amend these sins, they will die. For example, let's look at Papillion's death. As they venture deeper, the crew sees a burning vehicle with a boy in it, just chilling, minding his business. Papillion seems the most stressed and then says, "It wasn't my fault," which then leads him being taken into the burning fire and then stuck in the ground like an ostrich. This is a good death scene because we can infer everything about Papillion and his death from so little details given to us. His brother died in a car accident that was obviously Papillion's fault, but Papillon refused to take responsibility for this, so he's killed. In the film industry, it's all about timing, and I believe if this movie came out this year, it would have been seen in a much more positive light than when it initially did. It's not the movie's fault, but what can I say? The timing did have a negative impact on the audience and critical reception. I think some movies with time just age better, and this is one of them. There does exist genre fatigue, such as Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this movie was a victim of that. I recommend you see this movie if you were one of those people, as you might change your mind. Regardless, this movie has great pace as it flies by in a breeze, alongside some amazing scenes that are truly claustrophobia inducing. At the end of the film, there's a lesson to be learned, albeit a bit muddy, and I do enjoy the actual ending of the film and think it fits well with the entirety of what has been presented to us. So yeah, I like this movie and I really don't agree with what the general consensus says here. I advocate for a rewatch here, and this has been the Horror Spaces. Peace out.